We're always taught that 1 plus 1 equals 2, right? But what if I told you that in the world of creative thinking, it can actually equal 3? Well, according to Dave Trott's brilliant book, it absolutely can. Today, we're unlocking The Rebel's Guide to Creativity, a set of rules that might just change how you see everything around you. Now, this isn't some trick math problem. It's a question about creativity. The book's big idea is that true innovation isn't about inventing something out of thin air. Nope. It's about combining two things that already exist to create a third, totally new thing with its own value. So how does that really work? Well, let's break it down. And this really builds on an idea from Steve Jobs. Creativity is just connecting things. It's not magic. Think of it like this. All your experiences are like a collection of dots. The more diverse and interesting your life is, the more dots you collect. And the more dots you have, the more incredible the connections you can make. You start seeing patterns that are literally invisible to everyone else. Okay, so that sounds great in theory, right? But how do we actually put this into practice? Well, the first rule is simple, but it's incredibly hard to follow. Act before you regret. And the story behind this one, it's one of the most powerful you'll ever hear. This is Nicholas Winton. It's the late 1930s, World War II is on the doorstep, and he's visiting Prague. There, he sees the horror unfolding in Nazi-occupied Czechoslovakia. He sees children in mortal danger, and he's faced with this stark, simple choice: do something or do nothing. And he chose to act. Working against unbelievable odds and with huge personal risk, he organized trains to get Jewish children out of Prague and into the safety of Britain. I mean, this was a massive, dangerous, and totally secret operation. And this was the result of his choice. 669 children saved. And get this, for 50 years, the man never told a soul. It wasn't until his wife found a scrapbook detailing his work that the world finally learned about his quiet, immense courage. What his story just hammers home is this profound truth. The fear of failure, of looking foolish or making a mistake, that feeling is temporary. But the regret of not acting when it truly matters, that can last a lifetime. So that's the first rule. You've got to act. But acting is really only half the battle. What if you're acting on the wrong problem entirely? Rule number 2 is all about perspective. It teaches us that sometimes the most creative thing you can do isn't finding a new answer, but asking a completely new question. Let's look at the music mogul David Geffen. When he was starting out, he had nothing, and he was in an industry packed with giants. He knew there was no way he could outcompete them by playing their game. So he just decided to play a different game. Just look at this contrast. On the left, you've got the question that every single other record label was asking: how do we fight each other over the big established stars? But on the right, that's Geffen's question. What is everyone else ignoring? That tiny shift in perspective changed absolutely everything. And that one different question led him straight to artists no one else was even looking at. We're talking about the Eagles, Joni Mitchell, and years later, Nirvana. By just ignoring the crowded battlefield, he didn't just find success, he completely redefined the sound of popular music. This quote from the book says it all. Don't just solve the problem you're handed. You've got to get upstream, challenge the brief itself. Real creativity isn't about playing the game better, it's about changing the entire game. All right, our final rule is probably the most rebellious of them all, because it goes against pretty much everything we're taught. Embrace the chaos. It's this idea that your biggest failures, your biggest disasters, they're not the end of the road. They're just a detour to somewhere better. So this is John Lasseter, one of the geniuses behind Pixar. Early in his career, he was an animator at Disney, but he was completely obsessed with an idea that everyone else thought was just crazy: making a feature film entirely with computers. And for that passion, Disney fired him. They saw him as a disruption. But that career disaster was exactly what he needed. Getting fired forced him out on his own, where he ended up co-founding Pixar with Steve Jobs, and in 1995, their very first film, Toy Story, didn't just succeed, it changed the entire industry forever. And this is the lesson from Lasseter's journey. A disaster isn't just an obstacle, it's a gift. It's like the universe is violently shoving you off the path you thought you wanted and onto the path you were meant to be on all along. So what do we get from all these incredible stories? They give us a toolkit, a simple 3-part guide for applying this kind of rebel thinking to any problem you're facing. So here it is, the Rebel's Guide. Act like Nicholas Winton, because regret is so much worse than failure. Reframe your problem like David Geffen, because asking the right question always beats finding the best answer. And embrace chaos like John Lasseter, because your biggest setback might just be your greatest gift. And all 3 rules are powered by one core engine. Creativity is connection. And that brings us to the final question, the one I'm leaving for you to answer. With everything you know, all the experiences you've had, what new, game-changing connections are just hiding in plain sight, waiting for you to be the one to make them?